Coming up on Regarding Men, China learns from feminized West. Welcome to Regarding Men, yet another episode. And here I am with Paul Elam from paulelam.com and Janice Fiamingo of the Janice Fiamingo Files. And we're all three together, and we're all three on Regarding Men also. You should come and visit us on Regarding Men, where we hold men in high regard, and we literally watch red pill isolation die. I mean, we watch it. And there's groups every day, and one of the groups that just started is a writers group where men bring their writing in, they share it with each other, and they kind of give good feedback and here, try this. And it was very successful, I think, the last one, Paul, was it not?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, they did very well.
Good stuff going in there. So, any of you guys that have ambitions to write, or maybe you've already written, or maybe you're working on projects, you'd like feedback and support for getting them done, come on in, join Regarding Men.
You can
And
do it.
Saturdays at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, we meet for 90 minutes to read and discuss our writing.
There you go. And there's all kinds of other groups going on. You know, Janice, Paul, and I all lead groups during the week. And there's other people. Mike Buchanan leads a group. There's lots going on. So come and check us out for $5 a month. You can't beat it. Subscribestar.com/regarding men. Anyway, what are we going to talk about today? Today we're going to talk about China. How does Trump say it? China. Something like that. He's hard to imitate.
Like China the way Trump does. He's like the one person on earth that can nail it.
I know, it's true.
I've tried for months, and I won't embarrass myself in an attempt to emulate that.
So, what has China been up to lately? Apparently, let's see here what we've got. China's sick proposal to prevent the feminization of male adolescents.
Oh my God!
About that? Can you believe that? China's sick proposal to make boys more masculine. You know, and first thing, before we talk, and there's lots to talk about with this, but the first thing is, wait a minute, hold on. We should have the tires sound, because who has been making the genders more masculine for the last 50 years? Could it possibly be, the United States? That's a female football team, by the way, and you can tell that posterior there on the end is definitely a female posterior. Oh, yes. There she goes. And there she is in the boardroom. And then all the movies and things all about killing people. You know, it's fascinating. All the things that feminists complain about men, the aggression, the violence, and now they're pushing women to do the same daggone thing. Isn't that odd? I think it's odd. But anyway, we've got China doing the dastardly deed of trying to make boys more masculine. They're doing this in a pretty natural way by, encouraging gym classes, getting more male teachers, which, gosh, that sounds like a good deal to me. What do you guys think of all this?
I think China is watching how we fucked up things in the West and figuring if they want world domination, the path to get it is not by emulating us and our craziness with gender roles and gender insanity. I think that they are looking at, what does it take to make an army effective? Guess what? It takes masculine characteristics to make an army effective.
Yes.
Their number one wish here is for an effective army. They want world military domination. Yeah. And so they're not going to get there while Joe Biden is talking about fucking maternity flight suits for women. The Chinese are building a massive, huge army and instilling masculine characteristics into all potential soldiers, which they view. I mean, there are women in the Chinese army, but make no mistake, their fighting force is a male one, just like it is everywhere else in the world.
Yes, except for
And
us.
the more we, except for us, and the more we feminize, the weaker we become. Oh my God, Paul, that's such a sexist thing to say that when you're feminine, you're weak. Guess what? It's true.
It is true. Boys, when
Hmm.
they're 12 to 13 years old, develop 4 times the upper body strength of girls. They're literally a lot stronger in just about every part of their body, but upper body is particularly, they're particularly
Hmm.
stronger. That's just masculine. That's just the way it
Yeah.
is.
Tom, don't you know that's socialization?
Hmm.
Yeah.
All socialization.
Yeah,
Oh
that's
yeah, yeah. You're just
us.
telling the boys that. If you told the girls
Yeah,
that, their upper body strength would just go through the roof.
I
we could
socialized my penis.
quadruple. We could
Yeah.
we could quadruple female upper body strength in one generation simply by telling them that they can lift as much as boys.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yes. Mhm.
We should try that. No.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
Well, that's what we're trying to do right now. And yeah, I mean, it's so interesting reading these articles because, of course, well, I mean, yeah, what we're talking about here are the articles and their perspective on, which is very much a Western North American perspective on what China is doing. Not being in China, it's much more difficult to actually speak about China's own agenda. But yeah, the disdain that the authors of these various articles have for the notion that there's any connection between a virile and powerful world dominating nation and a virile, powerful, masculine population is it's very interesting. Obviously, China, seeking to be a world power and seeking to convince the rest of the world and its own citizens that it has both the might and the right to be a world power, China sees a clear connection between masculine strength and national pride and national strength. We don't see that anymore. We've decided that that's it's a shameful thing even to care about, and that a country can flourish, can do better if men are less masculine. It remains to be seen whether that is ever going to bear any kind of positive fruit. At the present time, certainly with the breakdown of families, the rise in fatherlessness, a generation or two or three of young men who are told that they should step back and apologize and surrender their privilege and feel bad about being male, and believe that femaleness is the future. The future is female, as they're told, and that they should be pleased about that. That doesn't seem to be working out very well for our cultures, and China is clearly not interested at all in moving in that direction.
Yeah,
And guess what? They're smart to take that approach. I mean, and I wish things were different because I live in the country that's going to lose in this proposition in the long-term scheme of things. We're falling way behind. Now we have a presidential administration that's going to push this, is already pushing this really, really the truly sick agenda. Which is the notion that men and women are identical and interchangeable in life. And
yes. And then
so
you
I'm
add on
sad
to
about it.
that the whole idea of affirmative action. You know, oh, well, since we're all equal, then everyone needs to get a chance to blow things up, or whatever. It's like, no, you need to take the best people. And China's taking the best people and raising them up. The best. If it's a girl, fine. If it's a guy, fine. But just take the best and educate them. Take them to do what you need to do. But we're taking what? We're what's the word for it? Milk toasting it. I mean, we're taking everyone should get a chance. No, absolutely not. Take the best people. What a
And the
concept.
sad thing is our own military is doing this. Tucker Carlson has been under fire
Yes.
directly from the military a lot for suggesting, God forbid, that serving in the military isn't some sort of right, that it's something that you should have to qualify for, and that not everyone will qualify, that it would, because the whole purpose of a military is lethality, the ability to kill efficiently with
There
as
you go.
little loss of life on our side as possible. That's what a military's job is to do. And even in the Pentagon, we have these lunatics pushing gender politics into the military arena by allowing trans people. Sorry, you don't have any business in the military. You're disruptive. And if the truth were told, women don't have any business in ground combat units, endangering the lives of the men there that will be already trained to act chivalrously and to take unnecessary risks.
To save women.
And then there's the deficit in upper body strength, the carrying of equipment, the everything that goes into making an efficient combat unit. We've ignored all this stuff for the sake of gender politics and for the sake of this make-believe world that everybody's the same with the same capabilities. It's absolutely insane. And China is going to eat our lunch over this.
And China must be bad for doing this. Which really, it blows my mind. It blows my mind. Wait a minute. The media has been so kind to China for everything else. I mean, everything. They won't call their cards for anything. But this, they jump on it. Isn't that fascinating?
Yeah. I think that is really fascinating.
That the left finally found something about China they didn't like.
Yeah.
So true.
I know. So I absolutely agree. It's just bizarre. You're not allowed to talk about the Wuhan virus. That's racist, right? To call it the China flu or anything like that. One is never supposed to call out China for its manifold human rights violations, for the atrocious manner in which it enforces conformity on its own citizens, for the terrible way it has socially engineered its society, for all of the horrible authoritarian or totalitarian practices, for its mistreatment of minorities within its borders. None of that is to be talked about. But here, suddenly, this is the thing that our authors can come forth and exercise their self-righteous denunciation. And let's not make any mistake about it. China is not considering this move to protect its young men against feminization. I don't think it's doing it for their mental well-being.
No.
By any means.
No.
It's doing it because exactly for the reasons that you just said. It's interested in projecting strength and genuinely building strength among its men. And I've been to China, which doesn't make me an expert by any means, but I toured 3 different universities and gave talks there. And I watched the military exercises going on in the morning on a university campus field. And it was impressive, to say the least. It was quite astounding, actually, the numbers and the military precision. And but I did, just to go back to say that obviously, it looked like that, 1,000-fold. It just made me laugh to read, especially the article that you flashed up on the screen there, Tom, by Gwyn Dyer, who's a Marxist Canadian journalist. I think that's an accurate thing to call him. To see his anger and his poo-pooing of the idea that there is any relationship between the feminization of men and national decline. And, to see his outrage at this sick practice. Well, I can think of worse things to be done to men than to have them trained, to have them, rigorously trained in physical education, which is basically what these proposals have to do with. I can think of worse things than that. And he mentions, for example, that China is a society that had a one-child policy from 1975 right up until 2015, which has meant, because many families chose to have a male child rather than a female child, and that has meant that there is now a huge excess of men who are redundant really in their societies to a certain extent. They're not going to find partners. And what is that? How is that impacting those men? Well, I think it's impacting them. It's making them even more disposable than men already are in all cultures. So men are in a tough situation in China, and it's a tough problem actually for the Chinese government to figure out how to deal with this gender imbalance.
Yes.
I know I'm not an expert in Chinese society by any means. I don't really understand exactly what their attitude to feminism is, for example. I hosted many female Chinese scholars at the University of Ottawa. The Chinese government has a really, to me, quite bizarre policy of financially supporting very large numbers of scholars coming to Canada and obviously to the United States as well. To learn about our societies. In latter days, I really wondered whether that was a form of spying, if not an overt form, maybe a kind of covert. I'm not even sure that those people who came thought of themselves as spies. I doubt that they did, but I wondered why the Chinese government was interested in funding so many young people coming to Canada to learn about Canadian literature. I just didn't think that it could possibly be that high on the Chinese government's agenda. But anyway, having said all that, we had extensive discussions about feminism, and about other issues in, intersectional feminism, multiculturalism, various ideologies, and it's hard to know exactly what kinds of inroads feminism has made in China. Certainly during the Cultural Revolution in the 1960s, Maoist ideology proclaimed the liberation of women, and women were encouraged to participate in the brutal excesses of the Cultural Revolution, as sort of warrior women who were quite willing to participate in the beating and even the murdering of dissidents or anybody who was deemed to be insufficiently revolutionary, all of that. I'm not sure what that did exactly to gender relations. Certainly Confucianism and Chinese traditionalism has a very conservative idea of gender roles. So, but I will say certainly that from my discussions with mostly female scholars, the idea of lesbian feminism, the idea of intersectional feminism, the whole hierarchy of victimhood that we have created in our societies, and the adulation of the moral superiority of the victim, all of that seemed quite foreign to the people that I spoke to. And I would expect that China would be very much not interested in having that imported to its own society.
Interesting. Chalk one up for China. Yeah, I heard that they had basically banned feminism in some ways. I think it was 2015. There was supposed to be some sort of protest. The Feminist Five, I think, is the group. And they, the day before the protest, they rounded them up basically and said, you're not doing that. It was a protest. It was going to be about sexual assault stuff. So who knows? But yeah, I've heard that they've cracked down on feminism pretty hard.
Well,
it's inevitable.
The government saw that for what it was, because the entryway has always been with the damseling. Entryway for feminism to weave their way into things it's through protecting abused or victims of assault or whatever, and they go in and then they start finding money and exercising power. And I bet the Chinese government said, nope, we've seen this before. Where was this?
Well, now I get a chance to speak, which really makes me wonder whether the Chinese do this and they basically have less gynocentrism than we do.
American.
He's back.
We missed
violent.
you there, Paul. You were
Yeah, yeah, I
you
know.
were
I was
frozen
frozen
for a
in a
bit.
funny position. Yes, in a very funny position. I saw it. Uh,
Please, please repeat what you, because you were saying something interesting there.
I don't have a clue what I said.
Well, what I was saying, Paul, after you finished, was that it looks to me like maybe China has less gynocentrism than we do. If they can cut this stuff off, and if they want to masculize boys, it seems likely that they have less gynocentrism than we do.
It
And
beats the heck out of feminizing boys. So
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, I think so. I think it's probably, I'm sure, but there has to be some level of gynocentrism in Chinese
yes,
culture. There
yes,
absolutely is.
yes.
But apparently not enough to handle it stupidly
Well,
as we have here.
it is interesting to look at the suicide rates in China. And it's the only country in the world where women commit suicide more than men.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
And
That is
I think
striking.
they value males more than they value females. I mean, look at the whole birth thing. It's pretty obvious. But that says something about us too. Perhaps we value females more than we value males. You know,
Oh, yeah.
and
No
that's why
argument
more men
there.
are committing
Yeah.
suicide. I mean, that's just who knows.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
being an Occam's razor guy, I would say that probably is the absolute truth. We care not a damn about men's issues, and of course, they kill themselves at 4 times the rate of women. Uh,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
Yeah.
think it's safe to say there's a correlation there.
It'd be interesting to see if China cares about men's issues. I don't know if they do, and I would bet
Uh,
they don't.
I don't think so.
Well, no, I don't think so. I mean, China cares about Chinese power. I
Yeah.
think
Yes.
it is a.
Yes.
I'm hesitant to say too much because I'm aware of my deep ignorance. I really don't understand Chinese society at all. But my sense of being there. And I met a lot of really great people. So this is nothing against the Chinese people, obviously, but I found it a very scary regime. And I went thinking that China was no longer the totalitarian communist dictatorship that it had once been. I thought it had that it had lifted the kinds of harsh restrictions, that it was opening itself both to more free enterprise and individualism, cultural freedom in general, and also, of course, to the influences of the outside world. And it can't help but be influenced by the outside world with the internet. Even a controlled internet, you can't stop the influence of the world through Hollywood and everything else. But when I was there, I felt that it was an extremely repressive place. I felt fear in the people that I spoke to, that they were aware that there are spies everywhere, that many citizens are recruited to spy on one another. Everyone was very careful what they said to me. There were little glimpses of resistance, but they had to be spoken in very coded ways. You couldn't speak anything against Chairman Mao. There are still statues to Mao all over the place. This mass murderer is still revered as the great father of communist China.
Yeah.
So I don't think China cares about its men. I don't think it is encouraging masculinity because it wants to make its men healthy. I do think it's ironic that the authors of these articles pretended to care about men, and to be worried about Chinese men.
Oh yeah,
yeah, very good, very good point.
And of course, I mean, nobody on our program is going to say there's only one way to be male. That's not our position in any way. But how ridiculous to read these articles where people are worried about young men being forced into a certain mold. Give me a break. Men in our society are forced into an extremely self-hating mold, and none of these ideologues ever says a word against it. So
Exactly.
you know, the idea that young men in China or boys in China are going to be drilled more rigorously in military style physical education courses, well, you know, there are problems with that, obviously, but it's going to increase their testosterone levels. You know, a lot of boys in China, I have a contact in China now. He's an Australian scientist who's gone to work in China because he realized that he was never going to be promoted in Australia because he's not woke. And so he's now doing his scientific work in China. And he said it like the chairman, Xi Jinping, is like, he is interested in masculinity, and he has this kind of romantic or even fascist, one could say, idea about the idealization of masculinity. And this contact of mine said it's true that a lot of young Chinese guys are not very strong. They don't tend to go to the gym. You know, they don't work out. They're not very muscular. They get out of puff running up the stairs. And, you know, so there is some basis to this concern of the Chinese leadership with the actual physical fitness of Chinese men. And, you know, anybody can look at Australian men or American men and see that they, in general, are bigger and stronger than Chinese men. And what the chairman and the leadership want is a nation that can, you know, is itself convinced and can convince the rest of the world that its men are set to dominate the world. And, you know, he pointed out, well, you know, from the Chinese leadership's point of view, that makes perfect sense. And so they're busy promoting the idea that everything about China is better than anywhere else. Chinese history is great and glorious and will be so again. The Chinese philosophy is great and glorious. The Chinese food is better and more healthy than anywhere else. That, you know, the Chinese have been at the forefront of scientific invention and investigation since the world began, and will continue to be so. And he said, you know, from the Chinese perspective, well, of course, that's what you're going to say. And he said, you know, the only other thing to complete the Chinese mission of world domination would be to convince Western nations that our history is shameful and that we should apologize for it, that all our inventions came from elsewhere and that we appropriated them from other people and we should feel bad about that. You know, that everything about our culture is inferior to that of others. That's all that would be necessary, you know, in order to complete the Chinese mission of world domination. And lo and behold, somehow it's happening. So,
voila!
From his
Tom,
perspective,
I don't think I don't think that China cares about men's issues for the same reason we don't. Governments are invested in male disposability. That's part of the fundamental problem here. And the moment you start acknowledging men as in any kind of vulnerable way or talking about their disadvantages from a pure consumerism point of view and a governmental point of view, it's a loser across the board to have men who we can acknowledge having problems. We need to use them up as sort of grease for the cogs of the machine and call it a day. And China's interested in male disposability, not in men's issues.
Right.
They need disposable men who will blindly go in and fight for whatever cause they're told to fight for and die for it. And that's how you build a military power. It's with men willing to die.
Yep.
Or having no choice but, you know, to do so.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I think it's really just so interesting, though, the left's reaction to all this, that with the Uyghurs being exterminated, committing genocide against them is just a cultural difference.
Yeah.
But
What the hell?
teaching boys to be masculine is somehow an affront to humanity.
Yeah.
Fuck out of my face with that hypocritical bullshit.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Absolutely out of their minds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which makes
Yeah.
you wonder if they're not paid off too, you know? To say dumb crap like that. It's just like,
Well,
why would
we
anyone
know
be?
that big tech and a lot of American business interests are deeply tied to China,
Yeah.
and that is by Chinese design.
Yeah.
And that too is working
Yes.
wonders.
Yes.
Yeah.
Our corporations are selling us down the river as we speak right now,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
the left is supporting that.
I know.
Yeah.
Which is
Yeah.
absolutely how we got to
Mind-boggling.
this point in history. I have no idea.
No,
But
yeah.
these
Unfortunately,
leftists were screaming at me 4 or 5 years ago about the terrible evil of corporate power. And
Yeah.
all of a sudden, here we are worshiping big tech and silencing free speech and helping China. What happened? I have no
Yeah.
idea.
Up is
Yeah.
down, down is up.
Yeah, the disease of deep self-hatred is so powerful that you don't even have to pay a lot of these guys to to support our own destruction. They're happy to do it because they believe that the culture we created is the worst possible one in the world and it deserves to die. Yeah.
Crazy,
Wow.
crazy.
And if it takes corporations to kill us, by God, that's what it takes.
Yeah. Yeah. Mhm.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Well, is this another happy ending? No.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so as we go down the tube.
Yeah.
Want to remind everybody, join us in Regarding Men. Just like Tom said at the top of this, we're having a great time in there.
Oh, man.
And lots of good stuff going on for a lot of guys.
It really,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
a wonderful thing
And
to
a
see.
lot of good conversations where one does not have to look over one's shoulder to
Yes.
see who is disapproving
I
of
popped in.
one's free expression of one's anger or one's convictions or one's questions, or whatever it happens to be. A lot of support.
I popped in the shed last night. Well, the shed, guys, is a place where you open 24 hours a day. And there are like 7 guys in there just having the best time sharing music and sharing ideas and talking about databases and whatever. So come and see us. It's just, it's lots of good things are going on.
Amen.
Yeah, man.
Sounds
Amen. And men
are
oh, God.
oh Lord.
I think one of these days we're going to decide beforehand
No,
in
that
what
would spoil
order
it.
we're going to go.
That would spoil it. It's much
Yeah.
more fun to try and be first. Because whoever's first can't screw it up.
Yeah,
It's
that's
the
true.
second and third persons that always
Well,
have the trouble.
actually, the first person to say "are" after the person says "men" didn't screw it up either. It was the only we know who screwed it up. I mean, we know.
As
I
Elon
mean,
finger points.
I'm not saying any names.
Are we finished?
Yes, I think we're done.
I think we are. Let's see if we can hit the right button here. Who knows? Oh, God. Bye-bye.